So if you're anything like me, you are constantly looking for house rules and homebrew and different things to improve and tweak and modify your game. I know I personally like to just change the rules just for the sake of doing something new. So if that sounds like you, then this should be a great video because I'm going to go through all of my house rules, the things I'm planning on using in my upcoming campaign that I talked about last time in last video, which I can link to up somewhere if you're interested in seeing my process for how I start to homebrew a campaign. But I'm going to talk about all of the house rules that I'm planning on using in that game and why I'm using each one. Hey everybody, it's Nick, and for somebody who does as much homebrewing and house ruling as I do, I'm surprised I hadn't made this video already, but here we go. So first off, why do you even house rule something to begin with? Professional game designers spend years creating a system of rules that were agreed upon and played tested and everything. Why would you ever change that? You're not a professional game designer. Why would you take that upon yourself? Well, I think it's because the game's not perfect. And also, it's kind of generic. They designed the rules of this game so that anybody could play and have a wide variety of styles and games and groups of different sizes, all playing the game in a way that was generically similar but not identical. But all of us have different play styles, and so it is perfectly reasonable to adjust and tweak and modify the rules a little bit so that they fit a less generic model and a more specific model, your style, the way that you play the game. It can also address any points of pain or things that are obnoxious or things that don't make any sense to you personally. You know, 5th edition was not designed to be a perfect simulation of a reality. It was streamlined in a lot of ways from previous editions. Also, we knew very little about how the game was played when it first came out. We now have years of hours of campaigns, of all kinds of information of how people play the game, and they didn't do a perfect job of making it exactly perfectly balanced. And it's okay, it's not supposed to be a war game that's specifically and perfectly balanced, but there might be some things that you want to tweak to maybe align a little bit better with your expectations or also, like I said, your style of play. The next thing I'll say about house ruling is that it should be done with player buy-in. You don't get to, in the middle of a campaign, say, I don't like how often the rogue is sneak attacking, you have to change how you sneak attack. That's not fair, that's not cool. The player has been playing a rogue for a long time. It's unreasonable to, in the middle of a session, nerf a player or change how a rule works or apply a brand new rule. These are things that I think should be discussed and brought up. At session 0, ideally, sometimes you acknowledge and find a point of issue in the middle of a campaign, in which point you go, okay, look guys, let's have a conversation about this as a group, and then like next week, so we all have time to get used to it, if it's something that we've all agreed upon. Because remember, while it is your table as a DM, and you are free technically to change the rules to whatever you would like, whenever you want, the players are also free to go, no, that's dumb, we're going home. And it's really hard to DM if you have no players. So while you should like and believe in the rules, it's also important that the players buy into any changes that you're making. The other important point is that these don't have to be final. If you use a rule for a little while, everyone bought into it, and then after a few sessions you go, listen, this isn't accomplishing the thing we want it to accomplish. This isn't meeting our design goals. Let's stop using it. Or even, let's come up with a way to make it better. Those are perfectly reasonable answers to a rule not applying in the way that you thought it might. You're not locked into anything. You can change it if you would like to. All right, so we're gonna jump into my personal changes, house rules, homebrew for different races, classes, character creation, and then general game mechanics. First things first, I'm not asking for any opinions here. These are the rules that I'm planning on using. I am not going to my YouTube audience to see if you like these rules or not. Please feel free to have strong reactions to them, to think a rule is incredibly stupid. You are also free to comment whatever you would like down below. I am also free to delete any comments that I don't feel add anything constructive to the conversation. So feel free to have an issue with why a rule is the way it is and air that grievance, and maybe I'll clarify something or give some extra context in the comments. I also might go, hey, that's fine. Don't use this rule in your game. I think it's cool, so I'm going to. Because again, everyone should be free to run games however they want. I am not telling you to use these rules. I'm just telling you these are the rules that I use, and here's why. All right, so hopefully we got all of those people out of the way, or else they're super geared up to watch all my terrible rules. I don't know. Either way, here we go. Races, or as I'm starting to call them, ancestries, but that is a whole other thing in terms of the word usage, race and ancestry in D&D. Totally different issue. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm using ancestry going forward. So I only have a couple of rule changes here. Aarakocra have a flying speed of 30, not 50. Some people just remove it altogether. I think it's kind of dumb. I don't think it's that big a deal to have one player character who has some fly speed. I just think it's a little ridiculous that you get nearly double the movement speed of everybody else when you are flapping your bird wings. I would rather you just have a normal, whatever your walking speed is, 30 feet, is your flying speed. I think that's plenty of utility, especially for a first level character. Maybe I would upgrade it later on, but I've never had anyone play an Aarakocra, so it hasn't come up that much. Dragonborn, breath weapon as a bonus action. This is pretty common. Dragonborn are pretty weak in general. I also have experimented a little bit with giving them thermal vision. But without the ability to see invisible creatures because they're magically disguised, so their heat signature wouldn't be there. It's kind of interesting. They're kind of lizard-like, and so it fits that theme. But it hasn't really played out too differently than dark vision, so it's basically just giving them dark vision, but, a lizard variety. Human, I do not use the variant rules that allow for the variant human type. Instead, I have my own sort of the house rule, homebrewed versions of humans that I have come up with, which I can link to down below. They are named based off of the countries in my setting, so can't do anything about that. But they're all sort of tied to various cultures of other ancestries in my world. Orcs. The orcs, as laid out in Volo's Guide to Monsters, are just plain terrible. There's no reason why you'd ever use that ancestry stat block as opposed to the half-orcs found in the player's handbook. So I tell players, just play a half-orc, and we'll flavor it as if you're an orc. It's not that hard. Yuan-Ti Pureblood. Holy cow, this race is busted. And I often have people say on Reddits or whatever that magic resistance on a player isn't that bad. How often are you using spells? And it's no. Magic resistance is not just advantage on saving throws against spells, it's all magical effects. And when people actually manage to get that through their heads, they realize it's crazy busted for a person to have from level 1. I don't think I would ever allow any player to just permanently have access from level 1 to magic resistance. That's crazy.
That's crazy talk!
So no magic resistance, and I turn the poison immunity into poison resistance. And you gain immunity to the poison condition. So you can't be poisoned and you have resistance to poison damage. Still a pretty good ancestry, but it's not immediately numerically better than every other ancestry as it is right now. I don't really have any rules or tweaks for the various ancestries in what I would consider newer books, basically any ancestries that have come out since Volo's, because players, A, haven't really wanted to play them, B, they don't really feature in my world like the Loxodons or any of the new guys from Theros. There's a bunch of different kinds of races out there, and they never really featured in my campaigns. I usually have a more grounded and typical fantasy setting for those ancestries, and so they haven't come up. If they did, I'd probably take it case by case. All right, so classes. Not very many tweaks here. I think I would often do a player by player, character by character changes for certain things, but in general, these are some changes that I am using going forward. Some I've used for a long time, some I'm trying out for just this first time in this campaign, and a lot of these I don't think will even come up because players aren't playing these classes, but these are the rules as they are. Monk's Stunning Strike costs 2 ki instead of 1. I know, monks are pretty weak. Why are you nerfing them? It's just for the fact that Stunning Strike is so obnoxious as a DM. Not only being stunned or whatever, that's not the big deal. The big deal is monks get 11 million attacks. And so as a DM against decently high level monks, okay, Stunning Strike, I gotta roll a saving throw. Stunning Strike, gotta roll a saving throw. Stunning Strike, gotta roll a saving throw. Oh my goodness. That's crazy. But I didn't want them to force them to say, you can only use it once per, turn. That seems kind of arbitrary and weird. Also, I recognized that we don't have the same kind of adventuring day that 5th edition expects. We have a much shorter adventuring day. And so it sort of made sense to say, okay, well then we will consume resources at a slightly faster pace than your typical adventuring day. Not 100% across the board, but mostly in this specific instance. I'm considering doing something where like patient defense doesn't cost a key, but it uses up your bonus action. So instead of, flurry of blows, you get a little better defense because monks are kind of in the front line, but also pretty weak defensively because they're only a D8 and have pretty bad armor class. So I'm considering, giving a bit of a trade-off there for monks. The patient defense does not cost a key, but stunning strike costs 2 key. Oh my goodness, paladins. So Aura of Protection is its own video. I have an entire diatribe about how terrible I think Aura of Protection is. The fact that you can give yourself a +3 to +5 bonus on every saving throw that stacks with proficiency and advantage and inspiration, and you can give it to all your allies. That's crazy. So to me, I think that the theme and flavor of this ability is that you are bolstering the courage of the allies around you. Why do you have to be bolstering yourself as well? So all I do is say the Paladin's Aura of Courage does not affect themselves until 18th level. So when it becomes the larger radius, then it also affects you. You get a bigger bonus with that boost at that point. But from levels 6 to 18, goodness gracious, that's crazy. I'm also considering a rule where you have to declare that you are smiting before you attack, and then after you hit, you can choose the level of smite so that, you have to do a little bit more like thought behind whether or not you're smiting. But I don't know. I'm up in the air on this one. I don't think any of my players are going to play a paladin, at least in the first wave, so I don't have to make a hard decision on it. But something about that feels odd to me. And the paladin is, in my opinion, one of the strongest classes in 5th edition, up there with wizards and druids. And so I think that they're not in need of any help mechanically and might be in need of some fixin'. But Aura of Protection's change does a lot of that work on its own. Rangers. I don't really have any other fixes for Rangers, with the exception of my own feel and thoughts about the Ranger are I think it shouldn't be a spellcasting class. Just when I close my eyes and I think about what a Ranger is, shooting lightning arrows and creating like walls of stone or whatever are not in that description. And so I have made my own homebrew martial, read spellless, Ranger, which I can link to down below and you can check out and see if you like. So I give players the option to use that instead. But generally I think the Ranger is okay, especially if you use the Xanathar's subclasses instead of the PHB ones. Beastmaster Ranger is sort of fundamentally broken. We all know that. If a player wanted to play a Beastmaster, I would probably just sort of find a good homebrew online that we both agreed on would be suitable and serviceable. Sorcerers, you gain additional spells known depending on your origin. So there's just going to be certain spells based on whichever origin you pick that you just know. These often come up in different UAs and things like that. And so I don't know why they don't stick with them permanently. Because I think that sorcerers have pretty bad spells known as is, and it's pretty a sad list, and so giving the sorcerers just a bit of a boost is helpful in my opinion. Warlocks sort of suffer from the same thing. So what I say is, all warlocks have that bonus potential spells known, the list that they get from just their subclass, and I say you get one of those for free, and the other one you can select if you would like, but it takes one of your spell known slots. So every time you get access to a new tier of warlock subclass spells, you get to pick one of them, and that one is just a spell known, doesn't cost you a spell known slot, but the other one you would have to pick normally. It just helps them out a little bit. Isn't a huge deal, but I think helps out warlocks, a bit more in that spells known department. All right, so those are the tweaks I have to character classes. Kind of light on that end, but in general, I think things are okay, and I can do much of any balancing I need with magic items and feats and abilities and things like that. And classes are usually not that tough. I often will homebrew whole subclasses or in some cases whole classes for certain players, but those are, sort of one-off cases and not always, 100% balanced for everyone's games. So these are just the generic ones that I'm using in this game coming up. As for character creation, the only two things that I'm really implementing in character creation are the way in which I'm generating stats and a bit of a boost to intelligence. So the way in which we are going to generate stats is I have a standard array that I'm going to give my players and say, if you would like, you can use this standard array. It's a little bit better than the standard array from the player's handbook because I think the one from the player's handbook is kind of weak sauce, but not significantly better. It's got some decent numbers, got some middling numbers, got some bad numbers, and it'll force a spread. But I also give my players the option to roll. And when we're all at our session 0 and we're all together, I'm going to say you have the option to roll for stats if you would like. And you can use the standard 4d6, drop the lowest, but you're going to roll in order. So your first roll is your strength, your second roll is your dex, and so on. So you do not know what your character is going to be like. So if you have a character concept in mind, you're like, man, I really want to play this rogue, it's super cool. Great, that's fine. Here, use this standard array. If you're like, rolling is awesome, I want to discover my character, I love the process of randomness, that's fine. You're going to, on average, get better numbers than you would if you use the standard array. However, you might get a bunch of 7s. Now, if I look at your rolls and deem them unplayable, then I would say I would let you re-roll again. But other than that, you're stuck. You can't roll and then go, no, actually, I'm going to take the standard array. If you're going to choose to roll, then you get what you roll. So it introduces some randomness and doesn't make it so that rolling is strictly better. I don't think it'll unbalance the game a ton. Honestly, I've never used it. Who knows how it'll go? But I like rolling for stats. I wanted to have that option available, but I also wanted to keep things a little more, tightly confined so the players weren't, some of them starting off with a really terrible stat, some starting off with great, or also the boringness of just everyone has standard array and that's it. Intelligence for skills. So this is something that I'm doing to just boost a little bit people who put some points into int. You're free to dump it if you would like. In most cases, it's pretty weak. The only thing I'm saying is you get extra skill proficiencies equal to your intelligence modifier to a maximum of 3. So if you are, like a wizard, one of the people who goes intelligence as their main stat, you're not automatically starting off with tons of new skills and stuff. But it is just a little bit of incentive to at least not put your negative number in intelligence, because if you put an 8 in intelligence, then that would be -1 skill proficiency. Also, I don't think the players are drowning in skill proficiencies as is, and so having a couple have a couple more I don't think is that big a deal. Oh, the third thing I'm doing, I just remembered, is I am decoupling ability score increases from race or ancestry. And I think what I'm going to do is allow people to choose whatever race you would like, and anytime it says +2 to X and +1 to Y, I'm going to let you pick what X and Y are without overlapping, so no +3 to 1 stat, but you can just choose what is what. And the reason for that is I want to sort of get away from this idea of these things are always this class or that class, or if you're going to play a barbarian, then you should probably play a half-orc or this or that, or if you're going to play a wizard, you better not play a half-orc. I would like different and interesting character concepts to come up, and I think that this is a cool way to do that, break some stereotypes and get away from some tropes and allow people to do something a little bit different. All right, so those are my thoughts on ancestries and classes and character creation. Let's get into the crunch of what do I change about how the rules at the table work. All right, so crit rules. I have tried a bunch of different crit rules. I've liked different ones for different reasons. I've tried out all kinds of things, and I have a couple in the back burner that I'm thinking about using. But this campaign, what I'm going to use, the players are heroes, and I think that criticals should be cool. But I recognize that if you buff crits across the board, if you're buffing randomness, then you're buffing the side that is weaker. Also, when you buff crits, you are buffing whoever gets more attacks. And in both circumstances, the monsters are generally assumed to lose as compared to the players. The players don't usually have a 50-50 in every combat or lower. They usually have greater than 50-50 odds of winning, as in, not all dying. So they also don't have as many attacks mano a mano, as the monsters do. So if you buff crits, if you buff randomness, you're buffing the weaker side, you're buffing the monsters. I didn't want to do that across the board. The players were also heroes. So I just said, well, what if the monsters roll normal, raw crits, and the players get something else? So what I'm doing is my players are rolling crit damage as the player's handbook, rules is written, but they also get some kind of unique little something something based on their character. So I will do character specific crit buffs. Now the idea is that they would all be about the same power level as each other, but different things. The bard is going to want something different than the rogue out of their crits, and so hopefully I will find a way to be able to tailor individual crit boosts to each character. It may be that the best way to do that is just a class by class basis, but I think I could give it a shot for character by character basis. So that is the experiment I'm going to be running. I have never done it before, but I think it sounds pretty cool, and I would be pretty stoked as a player to have my own unique, personalized, handmade crit boost. Well, you're talking about crits, that's more of a martial and attack kind of thing. What about saving throws? I'm so glad you asked, because that's the next topic. If you roll a natural 20 on a saving throw, you take no damage. So fireball, dex save, nat 20, no damage. And that is really, really intense for a lot of people. There's a lot of crazy things that have happened. Like this player is on their last legs and the bad guy targets the whole area with a fireball, and you roll a nat 20, you're not dead anymore. That is crazy cool because you took no damage. That's awesome. So I like to have crits mean something, 1s and 20s mean something in combat, and this is a way that I do that. If you roll a 1, you suffer a crit effect if you are a monster from the player's crit effect. So if you're thinking about whoa, wait, the spellcasters don't get their cool crit effects as PCs. Yes, they do. If the monster rolls a 1 on its saving throw, then the wizard gets to use their cool crit effect. If the players roll a 1, in the past what I have done is the spell does max damage, but that's pretty spicy. Max damage on a spell is pretty fight changing, and so I don't think I'm going to be doing that going forward. I may do a little extra something something if the players roll a 1 on their saving throws, but in reality I think it's kind of a little intense to do just max damage, so that's pretty crazy. HP per level. I tell the players that you can roll your hit die when you level up, and you can either take the result of that roll or the average of the die. And that just leads to nobody gets any bad rolls, but we get the fun feeling of rolling when we level up for hit points. I think that's kind of traditional and fun and classic. I like doing it. And in general, it lends itself towards higher average hit points for players, meaning I can throw cooler and cooler monsters at them. Flanking. We use it. We use advantage for flanking in the past. We have done +2. I think I'm going to talk with the players and see if they want to do advantage this time versus just +2. I would like to try advantage, but we'll see what the players want to try. That may be a rule that we try out for a little bit and then go back to just using the +2. But it also might be something that kind of works and is kind of cool, and you get a better advantage than just +2. Hit dice. You regain all of your expended hit dice over a long rest, not just half. That's kind of a bookkeeping thing. Most of my players aren't using all their hit dice all the time anyway, so it's not that big a change, but it is kind of weird for, okay, I'm a 7th level player and I used 3 hit dice, so how many do I get? I guess I get all of them back. Wait, I used 5 hit dice, but so I only get this many back, and it's rounded up to the... you get them all back. You get them all back. At the end of a long rest, you have them all back. Bonus action to drink a potion. I think pretty much everyone uses this. It's still an action to administer it to someone else, but it's a bonus action to use. Potions should get used more in combat. They're really cool. I like to give my players one-time use, really cool things. Powerful potions, powerful scrolls, and then watch them agonize over when to use it. Resurrection. I require the players to make a roll when they cast resurrection magic. Usually it's Revivify, and I just have the spellcaster make a spellcasting ability check. So it's a cleric, they would roll a wisdom check, d20 plus wisdom modifier, and they need to beat a DC of 10, +1 for every time that character has died. I think it's basically what Critical Role uses. It just makes it so it's not like, oh, he's dead, no big deal. We'll just like pick him up and it's fine. It's generally still gonna work. Only very few times has a revivify not worked when a player died, but it makes it less sure thing when somebody's like, oh, it's not that big a deal. We'll just res him after the fight. No, him dying is actually a big deal because he may not come back. Cool points. This is something that a lot of other people have used. None of these rules I don't think are like my own invention. A lot of them are stolen from other people. But cool points is something other people have used, sort of like inspiration, where basically I tell people that at the beginning of the session, everyone has one cool point that they can give someone else. And when someone else does something cool, has a great line in dialogue or a great plan they come up with or a really cool move they do in combat, one other player can give them a cool point. And basically the cool point works like inspiration. I, the DM, have unlimited cool points because I'm the DM, but it's a cool way for other players to engage with each other and say, that was a great idea, here's a cool point. And it's pretty neat. I'm working on ways to buff it up more because players sort of forgot to use it, so I want to make sure I'm talking about it more and get players to use that ability more. Overdraft magic. Now this one is a little bit out there, but I've only had it come up once in the like 4 years I've been using this rule. So basically what it is if you are out of spell slots, or out of spell slots for this level spell, you can attempt to cast a spell that is on your class's spell list, but you don't have prepared, and maybe you don't even have the level to cast. This is a desperation move. After casting this spell, I think you have to make a roll somewhere, maybe make a spell casting roll, like DC 10 plus the spell's level. But if you pull it off, then you cast that spell, and then instantly gain a level of exhaustion for every level of the spell, which means if you cast a 6th level spell or higher, you die. This is great for that last-ditch heroic effort. I want to cast Meteor Swarm on the bad guy as we try to run away, and we're only 5th level. Awesome. That's gonna kill you, and I tell my players straight up, if you die from exhaustion, you can't be resurrected because your soul is not willing or able to come back to its body. So they know this is perma-dead. And it's really cool. I've had one player use it. He used it to cast a 5th level spell, so he brought himself to the brink of death, and it was really tough, sort of helping that character survive for the rest of the adventure as they were on, high levels of exhaustion the whole time. So it's cool when it is used, but it doesn't come up very often. Curing diseases and removing curses. I don't really like that diseases and curses can just be hand waved away by like a 2nd level spell, I think it is, or a 3rd level spell. Makes them kind of anticlimactic and be like, oh no, we have this terrible curse from this narrative story setup that we can get. Remove curse, you're fine. It's kind of anticlimactic for me. So instead what I say is diseases need you to find some sort of antidote or a cure of some kind, and curses need you to perform some sort of ritual or act to get rid of the curse or kill someone who has put the curse on you. And remove curse and cure disease, or vice versa, or whatever it is, those just identify what needs to be done. You then still have to go and do it. You would still have to go and perform a little mini quest or side quest type thing to gather all the necessary ingredients for this antidote to the terrible disease you have contracted. So they still are useful, but it doesn't make curses and diseases lose all their oomph. As a side effect of it, I try to use curses and diseases very sparingly, so my players don't feel overly punished by this, but I think it preserves some of the coolness of those unique features. 10th level spells. I tell my players that they exist, and that's it. I have my own secret document about what they are. Only one person in the world knows each 10th level spell, and when they pass the knowledge on to somebody else, they lose it. It's sort of Vancian in that way. Also, I tell the players that you have one 10th level spell slot at 19th level. That's when you unlock it. And it takes a week for it to come back, an extended rest. I use Matt Colville's Strongholds and Followers extended rest system, where it basically requires a week of safe rest somewhere. And I trigger a couple different abilities off of that, but one of those is 10th level spells. So yeah, if you would like to cast 2 9th level spells in a fight, you absolutely can, but you can't use that second 9th level spell again until after you finish an extended rest. Feats. Okay, this one is what I'm going to get comments about. I'm sure of it. I have used feats in the past. I didn't like them. I don't like that it focuses the players on just picking a mechanical thing as opposed to doing cool things in the game. And so this last campaign, I removed feats entirely, and I sort of gave my players more titles and cool abilities and unique features. But my players sort of had a hue and cry and wanted feats back in the game and said, okay, I can meet you halfway. What if when you have the opportunity to take a feat, at the ASI feat levels, if you choose to take a feat, you tell me what kind of feat do you want to take. Maybe even using one in the book as an example, maybe not. Maybe come up with your own thing. I'd like to be able to do this kind of thing. And then I would hand build you a feat that was custom tailored to your character based on the things that you had done in game to earn this ability, unlock this feature. And then I would share it with you and you go, that's kind of weak. That's not really what I was thinking of. And I go, cool, let's continue to work it out and build it out together. So I had in the past sort of had to have all these house rules and bans on certain feats and tweaks to other feats. And I was like, let's forget that. What if I just designed feats for my players? I like designing features and giving them stuff, especially if it's hand-tailored to their characters. So this is another one of those. I know some people are going to reject this. That's fine. I'm not telling you have to use this rule. I'm just saying I'm going to give it a shot. The players all seem very excited about this when I told them about it. Death saves. This is one of the rules that might be permanent in all of my games going forward, kind of regardless of whether or not my players like it at first glance, because I think it is amazing. I've used it as a player, and I'm very excited to use it as a DM. So the rule is pretty simple. You roll your death saves in secret. You roll your death save, and then you send me a message privately. Maybe you hide it if we're at the table, but we've been playing online because of very obvious reasons. And so you roll it in secret. You don't announce it to anyone else. You message me the result, and then play continues as normal. So people don't know if you failed that save. Did you succeed that save? Did you roll a 1 and you failed 2 saves? It becomes this sense of urgency when you have a downed teammate and they've been down for 2 rounds. In the previous system, you go, oh, they've got 2 successes, it's fine. In this system, you go, it's been 2 rounds. They could already be dead because they rolled a failure and then a natural 1. So we need to really make sure we see if we can get them some healing and get them back up, because maybe they rolled 2 failures and they're about to roll a 3rd one. We have to help them. So I think it amps up the tension and makes it really, really cool. And it sort of simulates how it would go. You just see they're unconscious. You don't know how close to death they are. Prone. Prone's pretty weak. All I do is I implement a rule that has existed since the beginning of D&D, to my understanding. When you stand up from prone, you provoke attacks of opportunity. So it just, creates a little more oomph in prone. They removed this rule because they didn't want so many attacks of opportunity all the time. So they removed lots of things that provoked attacks of opportunity in previous editions. I just added this one in because I think knocking somebody prone is a cool strategic choice, and I wanted to have a little more kick to it. Identifying magic items. This reflects some of my own personal thoughts about how magic items should and shouldn't work, and 5th edition's thoughts about that. But anyways, these are my own personal thoughts. You'll probably not like these rules and not take them. That's okay. Just don't crucify me as a result of them. I get rid of attunement because I think it's kind of dumb, and it's sort of arbitrarily like you're not allowed to have too many magic items. In that case, why are you giving out that many magic items? And you're also not allowed to hoard magic items and keep them away from your teammates. In that case, why are we adventuring with you? We're all friends playing together. Magic items should kind of be a conversation amongst the group about who gets what, and is not like, I'm going to have 19 magic items and I don't care if you have none. You shouldn't play with that person if they're going to do that. So, and at least with friends around the table, I definitely I'm not using attunement going forward. Also, in terms of identifying magic items, you don't auto-identify items anymore. You can pick, because they have no attunement, you can just pick an item up and start using it, but you don't know what it does. I know what it does, and I can apply those benefits to you, or curses to you, but you don't know what it does. You just start using it, and the way that you identify it is you cast Identify on it, or you go find someone who does. And so I feel like nobody uses Identify anymore, and they just sit there and like, I'm just going to hold it for an hour and I just will know it intimately. Like, let's get rid of that. I think that magic items should be rare. I think it should be special. I think it should be cool. I think that most magic items in 5th edition are kind of boring, kind of mellow. I like neat flavor items, like, a hat that makes it so that you never get wet in the rain. That's pretty cool to me. But if you're going to have like a real magic item, like a signature weapon or a dope suit of armor, it should be cool. And I don't see that very much in magic items in 5th edition, at least not until you get to like legendary and artifact items. And I want to be giving players those things at like 5th level. And so I only want you to get like one or two of them through your adventuring career. So I don't want it to be World of Warcraft where everyone is outfitted with every item slot possible. I want it to be something closer to like Arthurian legend where you have like Excalibur and that's it. But Excalibur's dope. And it makes you a king. That's pretty cool, right?
Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. But you can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery tart threw a sword at you.
So those are the house rules that I have, at least the ones that I have in my own sort of house rule document. I may use some other ones sort of on the fly at the table, but those are the major ones that I go through with all the players and get them on board with before we jump into a game. And so a lot of those are just addressing things, balance issues or tone issues or flavor issues that I personally like or dislike or whatever in 5th edition. Let me know which ones of those are your favorite, which ones of those you hated. I would be happy to engage in a reasonable discussion about different rules. I'm probably not going to change anything based on your opinion, but I would like to engage and you know, sharpen my own thoughts as to how these rules work, and maybe you have some ideas for some fixes and things. I do have a system that I'm cooking up for a way to mechanically encourage players to narratively describe their action in combat. I find that players don't do that very much, and oftentimes because there's not really a reason to other than, you know, it's fun, but players don't get started with that without a mechanical encouragement. So I think I'm going to make a separate video about that once I have fully finished stealing the idea from a friend of mine. But that is for another video. This is the bulk of the homebrew house rules that I am using. Let me know what your favorite house rules are, ones that I should be using but I'm not for whatever reason. If I'm missing any, that would be great to find out before I start a brand new campaign. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.